Hey everyone, thanks for being here. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. We've still got some folks in the food line, so thanks. Hey everyone, welcome to Legacies and Lunch on this very, very balmy March day we are having. I have not stopped sweating since 9 a.m. I hope you haven't either. I'm Danielle F. Sorda. I'm the Community Outreach Archivist and Programs Coordinator for the Cowles Butler Center for Arkansas Studies. Welcome to Legacies and Lunch, Little Rock Spice District. This monthly program features talks on Arkansas-related topics, and we're so thrilled to be here in the beautiful Dara Center. If you want to explore the beautifully renovated main library more, there's now a guided tour that takes place right before this, and you can register for that at the Cowles events calendar online. And we're also now able to provide lunch for this program thanks to the Cowles Foundation. The foundation supports many library programs and depends on your donations. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit cowles.org/foundation. Lunches are provided on a first-come, first-served basis, and we can't really accommodate dietary restrictions, but we are sure to list ingredients, so you can check those there. If you're joining us in person and you parked in library parking, you can get your parking validated at the food table. And be sure to get a raffle ticket. If you did not get one already, you can get one before the end, and we'll do a second raffle at the end. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the first raffle for a tote bag and a mug. The ticket number is 270 for the last 3 digits. James. And additionally, we'll be doing one more raffle at the end for a copy of the book Women Make Arkansas in honor of Women's History Month. And we have a few Cal's Roberts Library programming updates as well. We invite you to join us for Second Friday Art Night next Friday, March 13th from 5 to 8 p.m. And we're going to be moving here to the main library. So we hope to see you there. We will have local artists selling their work, art demonstrations, social knitting, a craft table, and some live music and light refreshments and libations. I'd also like to invite you to join us for the program Memories of the Ottenheimer Brothers and the Rocket Plant on 10th and Spring Street. And that will be here in the Dara Center with Roberts Library's own Rhonda Stewart. And that will be on Tuesday, March 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. You can learn more about these programs and other upcoming programs for Women's History Month at robertslibrary.org. And for today's talk, we're joined by Carly Kogel for a presentation about Little Rock's Vice District. This talk will explore the history of commercial sex in Little Rock from the antebellum period through World War I, situating local developments within the broader national trends of vice regulation and moral reform. Carly received her bachelor's degree in anthropology from the University of Central Arkansas with minors in history and gender studies, and recently completed her master's degree in public history at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, during which time she served as a graduate assistant at UA Little Rock Center for Arkansas History and Culture. Her historical research interests include gender, labor history, and social movements. If you have questions and you're joining us via Zoom, please put your questions in the chat, and we'll alternate in-person and virtual questions at the end of the session. Please join me in welcoming Carly.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I'll wait for the, seems like there's maybe some technical.
No, we're just getting it rolling.
Okay, I see. Well, thank you, Danielle, for the introduction and for inviting me to come and give this talk. This talk is the culmination of my thesis research that I completed in May. Whoops. I've got a lapel mic, yeah.
It's not like pointing at you, it's pointing.
All right, is that any better? I just need to project. Okay, is that testing? All good? Thumbs up in the back? Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. So this talk is the culmination of my thesis research that I completed whenever I was doing my master's degree in public history last spring. I do want to start by recognizing some of the limitations of the historical record. The women who lived and worked in Battle Row, which I will be talking about, appear in the historical record primarily through their encounters with court systems and other systems of authority. Okay,
You might have to switch to a hand.
Okay.
Here you go.
All right. I saw some thumbs up. How about now? Is this okay? Okay. I'll reiterate that I want to take a moment to talk about the limitations of the historical record. The women that I'm going to be talking about in Battle Row and Fighting Alley appear primarily in the historical record through their encounters with systems of authority and the court systems. These systems that kind of have preconceived notions about the women and the work that they were completing, like newspaper articles. So the voices of women in the sex work industry are rarely highlighted, and instead they are presented the perspectives of the authority figures and promoted the view that sex workers posed a threat to the moral order of society. Still good? All right, fantastic. All right. So still, I think these sources reveal a valuable information about the systems under which the women in Battle Row were working and living, and it provides a glimpse into the racial and gendered and economic hierarchies in place in the city, as well as the changing ideas about morality, sexuality, regulation, and the suppression of vice. I also want to make note of the use of language in this presentation. There's no shortage of dehumanizing language used to describe women who are engaging in sex work in these sources. Lewd women, abandoned women, frail and depraved characters are just some of the many terms that are used. And recently, the term prostitute has been suggested to be removed from scholarship as well. So for the purposes of this presentation, when I'm not directly referencing primary sources, I will use the term sex worker. So with that said, Battle Row was a warehouse district located right next to the steamboat landing alongside the Arkansas River on what was once known as Water Street. Goods brought in from steamboats were stocked the warehouses. And this area gained a reputation not only as a place where you could purchase linens or lead and other goods, but also as a place where one might find a stiff drink, a card game, and a dance house. So here's a photo from the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies that features the warehouses. Unfortunately, the historic record is rather slim for actual photos of any of these brothels or places where women were conducting their businesses, but this is the area where they were conducting their business. The first city ordinance against houses of ill fame, as they were sometimes called, was in 1848. The ordinance declares houses of ill fame a nuisance and authorizes police to remove them. And though there were certainly houses of ill fame in Little Rock before the ordinance and following this ordinance, the brothels at this time seem to have been fairly small operations. This is the only ordinance regarding brothels that has passed until the end of the Civil War. So 1848, there is a declaration that brothels and bawdy houses would be considered a nuisance and that police were authorized to remove them, but then it's quiet until the end of the Civil War. However, it is after the end of the Civil War that previously small operations of Battle Row significantly expanded. In 1866, the City Council passed 2 ordinances within just a couple months of each other, both of which related to sex work. Ordinance number 25, defining certain offenses against public morals, which is what it was titled, established a fine against the keepers of bawdy houses and those who employed sex workers. And ordinance number 38, defining and punishing vagrancy, deemed any prostitute, courtesan, bawd, or lewd women, or any female inmate of a bawdy house, house of prostitution, house of assignation, brothel, or house of bad repute as a vagrant. But even despite these ordinances, Fighting Alley soon emerged, and it was adjacent to Battle Row in an alley on Elm Street. And given their close proximity and corresponding reputations, locals frequently used Battle Row and Fighting Alley interchangeably, though Fighting Alley became the more frequently used term over time, particularly in the latter half of the 1870s. So in 1870, the Little Rock census labeled 19 women in one way or another as sex workers. Among those was one of the more notorious women in Little Rock's Vice District, Kate Merrick. Though she was most recognizable as Kate Merrick, she did have some other names that She did have some other names that she used, including Kate Carble, Kate Nutt, and Catherine Corville. She was born in Pulaski County and would have been somewhere in her late 20s in 1870 when she appears in the census. In the census record, she identifies herself as the keeper of a body house, or of a boarding house, excuse me. That's an important distinction to make. She, yes, declared herself as the keeper of a boarding house, and later on, the census taker, it seems, pinned in the term body house next to that entry in the census. At that time, Merrick's house had 7 women, 2 men, one of whom was a cook, residing in her house. Her establishment, Ocean Wave, was located on Water Street and had quite a reputation. Men were warned that should they enter Merrick's establishment, they would likely leave sans their wallet. Between 1870 and 1882, Merrick would be featured in headlines no less than 93 times. And her experiences in the police court reveal a practice that strayed from the public condemnations of vice that we see in these ordinances that are being passed. Officially, sex work is being condemned. Functionally, it's being permitted as long as it remains contained and profitable for the city. So following a March 1875 act, which gave municipalities the right to regulate or suppress body houses, disorderly assignation houses, and houses of ill fame, the city passed ordinance number 26, which sought to better regulate licensing in the city. This ordinance required dance house keepers to pay $10 per night in advance for a license for their business. That same month, the council also passed an ordinance which expanded on previous definitions of vagrancy from Ordinance 38. In 1879, Merrick went before the city council requesting that the licensing fee for dance houses be lowered, or else she would have to shutter her business. Alderman Gillum, one of the aldermen sitting on the city council, spoke up and moved to grant the petition to make the license end quote, make the license easy so that they can pay it. It will keep them where they belong. Alderman Thompson seconded this motion, though Alderman Cook insisted that the matter be referred to the police court, for which he was the chairman. Alderman Gillum's motion to grant the petition was lost. And only months later, Merrick testified before the courts that Alderman Thompson agreed to use his vote to sway the city council on the matter of the petition in exchange for $10. Merrick's petition was denied, though her business continued to operate. And for the next few years, Merrick continues to appear in the courts, both for keeping a body house and for robbery. In 1882, Merrick died, and following her death, the city's complex relationship and emotions about her were revealed. The Daily Arkansas Gazette printed a statement saying that she had been arraigned many times before the courts at the insistence of men who claimed that to have been robbed in her house, but also that she was known to be charitable to a degree that would astonish many professional Christians. Another report claimed that her generosity awakened admiration, while her deeds of violence excited the attention of the courts. Another report likened her to Robin Hood. And there was another instance in which an infant was left on her doorstep with a note attached to the infant, specifically addressing Merrick and asking her to care for the child. So it's clear that city officials and the citizens of Little Rock had a fairly complex idea about the way that she carried about her business, but also her charitable nature. That the fines paid by these women were being used to fill the city coffers was no secret. As you can see on the Arkansas Democrat, they say Kate Merrick this morning paid her regular fine for keeping a dance house. So it's clear that it was viewed more as a licensing fee rather than an actual court fine. On one occasion, the local news column reported that the city treasury had been enriched by the periodic bagnio fines. Bagnio was another term for brothel. On another occasion, 7 proprietors of houses of ill fame were called before the police courts for the purposes of contributing something toward defraying the expenses of running the city government. In 1886, Little Rock Mayor Frederick Kramer lamented over the struggle for paying to find funds to pave city streets. And in the details of his budget, he stated that part of the city's budget included fines collected from body houses. As he was nearing the end of his term, Kramer hoped that his successor would be able to run the city on better and more economical basis than he did, and not make the saloons, gamblers, and body houses pay the expenses of the fine, or pay the expenses of the city.
Showing the correct slides still.
Yes, yeah.
Just
Oh, now it's running away from me. There we go. Yes. As the ideas about sex work began to grow in places across the country, on average, so Kramer hoped that his successor would be able to run the city without having to utilize the fines collected from those who were keeping body houses. On average, a woman charged with being a keeper of a body house were charged anywhere between $10 and $25, that they also had to pay court fees. And those who were charged with being inmates, which is the term of the women who worked under the keepers, inmates were on average charged $5 on a pretty regular basis, about a monthly basis, when they were brought before the courts. And then debates subsequently emerged about the validity of vice being used as a source of revenue for the city. As ideas about the regulation of sex work began to grow in places across the city, people in Little Rock were also grappling with the question of whether sex work would be regulated and how to regulate it. Rather than suppression, which was the preference of some of the citizens of Little Rock, one writer in the Daily Arkansas Gazette supported methods of regulation which could bolster the city funds, and called upon the City of Little Rock officials to create an official policy for the regulation of sex work, gambling, and liquor sales. Meanwhile, another individual wrote that fines were neither effective nor harsh enough of a penalty, claiming that dragging these women before a court to their own shame and impose a light fine as a kind of occupation tax is no check on evil, but tends to foster rather than destroy it. So we're seeing here as we near the turn of the century, that people have very differing views about whether to regulate or suppress the vice that's occurring. I'm sorry, did somebody? Okay, sorry. On April 2nd, 1870, a group of people went before the city council to ask that a house run by a woman named Kate Marsh be officially declared a nuisance. And the city council referred the matter to the police committee, though their determination on the matter was not something I could find in the historical record. I'm sorry?
What does nymphs to pay mean?
Oh, it's a French term. Yeah, that basically translates to lewd women. I'm not sure of the exact translation. I'm sorry? So the city council referred the matter to the police committee, and I did not find their determination in the historical record. But Marsh continued to have run-ins with the police court, so it seems she continued her business as usual, and continues to make appearances in headlines for years to come. She was born in Ireland around 1835 to 1845, and she was recorded for the first time in the Arkansas census in 1870. In the census, Marsh also proclaimed that her occupation was the keeper of a boarding house. And in that instance also, the census taker pinned in the words "frail characters" beside that entry, and beside the entry of the other residents listed in the house. There were 5 women in Marsh's house, all between the ages of 22 and 26. Annie Hawkins was the only Black resident in the house, and she was listed as a cook rather than a frail character. So regardless of the police committee's determination, as Marsh carried on her business, it seemed that somebody attempted to take matters of suppression into their own hands in 1871 as Marsh was anticipating to move into a new 7-room house. The house caught fire, and the Daily Arkansas Gazette remarked that her housewarming party came too soon and in a different manner from what was intended. The frame building caught fire, and authorities concluded that the fire was likely started by a person who opposed Marsh's business and believed an incendiary device to be the best method of suppressing it. Fires were not at all uncommon. These were all frame buildings, but this would not be the only fire of suspicious origins in Battle Row, nor would it even be the last fire in one of Marsh's properties. She has another building that burns down in subsequent years. So Marsh and Merrick's life underscores a central theme in Little Rock's vice history, that sex work was embedded in the city's social, legal, and economic fabric. However, not all women had the same experiences of the sex work industry in Little Rock. Race played a critical role in shaping both the public perception of vice and the responses of city officials. While there are sparse records of the lives on the lives of the white women who lived and worked in Fighting Alley, the records relating to women of color are even more sparse. There were racially segregated brothels, though there were instances of women of color working out of white brothels, as well as white women working out of black brothels. The most popular of the brothels for women of color was a cluster of 3 resorts on East 2nd and Commerce Street, known collectively as the Owl's Nest. Reports vary on who ran the nest, as it's sometimes called, though some records indicate a black man by the name of J.H. Jackson was the proprietor, while others suggest that either Fannie Livingston or Mary Wells, sometimes known as Penitentiary Mary, was in charge. The Owl's Nest, in particular, gained the attention of police. Like with other brothels, police regularly charged women fines for prostitution, though in the case of the Owl's Nest, the police hardly seemed content to let them carry about business as usual after securing their payment. Police routinely raided the buildings, jailed its occupants, and ultimately forced its closure several times. These actions were an extreme that the authorities had never taken with white brothels and white women who were running these businesses. The resort was shut down for a short time in August 1885, but it was appearing in headlines once more by October of the same year. But the frequent arrests and raids persisted, and in 1896 an official ban was placed on the Owl's Nest. And while shutting down the Owl's Nest, orders were also given that the resorts that were permitted to continue in operation were not to allow inmates to appear in the verandas or porticos. Signaling a desire to further push vice from public view, but the shuttering of the Owl's Nest while simultaneously permitting other resorts to continue their operations and publicly acknowledging that other resorts were being allowed to continue in operation highlights the racialized double standard embedded in Little Rock's regulation of the sex work industry. City officials prided themselves on the closures of the Owl's Nest, remarking that Little Rock's most disreputable resort is therefore a thing of the past. I will say that it does appear again after the turn of the 19th century. It comes back. It moves to a new location, but it does come back. So the last decade of the 19th century was a poignant turning point for vice reform ideology. It was at this time that the elite good government advocates proposed the establishment of vice districts as a way to isolate working class politicians from their more unsavory constituents. Major organizations as well as state authorities began to debate the merits of vice districting, which was declared constitutional by the Supreme Court in 1900 in the case of LaHote v. New Orleans, and in 1895, Arkansas Governor William Meade Fishback responded to a query about the social evil problem in which he made his opinions on vice districting known. He says, "Body houses are just as necessary to city life as any other sewer, and upon the same principle, if you close your sewers, you overflow your whole city with sewage and filth and disease and pestilence. So if you close these kinds of sewers of men's animal passions, you overflow the homes and spread disaster. Both kinds of sewers should be under police regulation that their evils be minimized." The Little Rock Pastors Association publicly rebuked this statement from Governor Fishback. Governor Fishback and the members of the Pastors Association continued to debate each other in public format for several editions of the Daily Arkansas Gazette. And though some cities like Fort Smith, for example, designated segregated districts through formal means, Little Rock, like many other cities, never felt compelled to explicitly define legal parameters to contain vice. They instead utilized informal methods of segregating vice. The Little Rock City Council, for example, made it a point to try and isolate sex workers and their businesses from outside the district by passing an ordinance in which telephone companies were prohibited from placing telecommunication devices within immoral houses. And telephone companies were compelled to make the police aware of any houses of ill fame that requested forms of telecommunication. So this growing national attention on the social evil set the stage for a more formalized systemic response to vice. While earlier efforts focused on suppressing scandal or reacting to individual cases, progressive era reformers sought to reshape urban morality through policy and planning. In Little Rock, these shifting ideologies culminated in the 1911 election of Charles Edward Taylor. Under Taylor, the regulation of vice in Little Rock would be fundamentally altered. Taylor, a businessman who had spent most of his life in Arkansas, ran against the former Little Rock alderman John Toohey in the Little Rock mayoral race, and he sought to unseat the candidate of old traditional views, and he ran his campaign on the promise that he would create a bigger and better and cleaner Little Rock. After an incredibly close and contentious race, Taylor was elected as Little Rock mayor in 1911. The year before Taylor was elected as the Little Rock mayor, the mayor of Chicago, Illinois, Fred Buse, appointed a commission to study vice in Chicago. This was the first commission of its kind in the country. And when the report was released, it was titled "The Social Evil in Chicago." It was released in 1911, and it caught the attention of hopeful anti-vice reformers across the country. The report amassed widespread coverage in newspapers. And before his first year in office was complete, less than a year from the publication of Chicago's Vice Commission report, Taylor announced his intentions to create a commission to study the issue of vice in Little Rock. Taylor formally announced the creation of Little Rock Vice Commission in January 1912, making Little Rock one of 9 cities to launch a commission to investigate vice in that year. So this effort went on for several years, nearly a decade, and Little Rock was pretty close at the beginning of that effort to start investigating vice in these cities. Taylor stated that the Vice Commission reports of Chicago and Minneapolis would be a valuable resource against which to model the work of Little Rock's commission. Taylor appointed 22 people to serve on the Vice Commission, and additionally, there was a separate commission on colored vice, the Little Rock Colored Vice Commission. And the findings of these two commissions were pretty remarkably different. The White Commission, reported that at the time of their report, there were 19 white houses of ill fame run by women and located in a segregated district in the eastern part of the city. They reported that the ages of the women were said to range between 16 and 45, with the majority of the women being between 18 and 25. They also noted that most of the women in these houses were of well-known, prominent families and had received good education, and that they were allowed to operate on a fine of $25 per month, with each inmate of the house paying an additional $5 per month. And while the city officials framed these charges as fines, businesses were permitted to continue their operations so long as the fee was paid. On paper, selling liquor within the houses was also illegal, though liquor could be found for sale in all of them. So this added an additional monthly fine of $50 per month. In contrast, the commissioners on Little Rock Colored Vice Commission stated that they did not find any, quote, licensed or police-regulated brothels for people of color, though they noted that there were some rooming houses and boarding houses that were suspicious. The Colored Vice Commission recommended that all rooming boarding houses be regulated and open to police inspection, and they also recommended that greater recreation opportunities be created for Black members of the Little Rock community so that they could stay away from the temptations of vice and evil. They also called for an examination of wages being paid to Black women and girls, and they asserted that an increase in wages would help prevent them from turning to sex work out of economic necessity. On June 6, 1913, on the recommendation of the Vice Commission, Taylor addressed a letter to the Little Rock Chief of Police instructing him to notify all brothel keepers that their houses must be closed no later than August 25, 1913. The month after, in September 1913, the month after Mayor Taylor ordered the houses of the segregated district closed, the State Hotel at West Markham and Chester Street were raided by the police, and Miss R.H. Hawkins was arrested for conducting a house of ill fame out of the hotel, and she was fined $25. And police reported that Hawkins' arrest was the second of its kind since the closing of the district in the month prior. So no longer were women working out of the houses that were run and occupied by other women. Instead, their businesses transitioned to hotels in hopes of being less conspicuous. Women also then faced the challenge of spreading the word about their business and came to use and rely on hotel bellboys and taxi drivers to act as go-betweens for securing clientele. This is all to say that although the Vice District was closed and closed the brothels in 1913, this did not put an end to sex work in Little Rock, and instead women were forced to adapt to find other ways to conduct their business and conduct their trade. And even through the 1950s and the 1960s, whenever the American Social Hygiene Association was conducting prostitution surveys across the country, they conducted several prostitution surveys here in Little Rock and frequently found that sex workers were easy to find and easily available, and that bellboys and taxi drivers could often help point people in the direction of those who were looking for their business. So the women of Little Rock's Battle Row spent decades navigating the ever-changing and complex realities of vice regulation and public perceptions, and ultimately this underscores the way in which class, gender, race, and ideas on morality intersected in shaping both the regulation and lived experiences of sex workers in Little Rock. Oh, here's the report about just a month after the closing of the district, when they had transitioned to hotels pretty swiftly. All right, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Carly. So we'll take questions now. We'll alternate Zoom and in person. If folks are on Zoom, they can put questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and I'll get to those, but we can start in the room. Does anyone have questions for Carly?
Yeah, so on that map, I don't have pins pointing to where the different houses were located. It's just it's one pin that shows where that street, where Battle Row was. And that's yeah, right there.
So it's that little marker in the bottom left.
So here's Water Street, and the Steamboat Landing is marked over on the far left side of the corner with Battle Row written in right beside it.
Judge Arnold, did you have a question?
Was there any attempt to use any of this revenue, whether you call it licenses or fines, for medical purposes, for ensuring the health of the workers and of the customers?
Not in Little Rock. There were other attempts in other places in the state and in the country. I think Fort Smith formally created a vice district in 1909, and under that ordinance, sex workers were required to undergo health inspections. And there was an attempt by the St. Louis City Council in 1874 to regulate and require medical inspections for sex workers, but that was not anything that happened in Little Rock.
Someone asked a question that you may not know the answer to. Do you know what the $25 fine may be equivalent to today?
I do not. I do not know what that is.
I would recommend an inflation calculator.
Yes.
Somebody feels like pulling up. I imagine it is much more than $25. And do we have other questions in the room? Yeah. Bring you the microphone.
You may have said this and I missed it, but did you say what year? You said at some point there were 19 houses of ill repute. What year was that?
That was that was the finding of the Little Rock Vice Commission. So that was 1912. They were conducting their investigation. In 1913, they published their findings where there were 19 white houses, white-owned houses that were run by white women.
Jessica on Zoom asks, is there anything in the records that indicates that Black women would move to different houses after the Little Rock police got involved, such as Storyville, like the New Orleans example?
Yeah, and especially with Owl's Nest, there were several attempts to shut down and shutter the Owl's Nest, and there were even messages put out to local authorities or to local residence owners and so on not to rent to Black women of ill fame, but they did find alternative places of residence and business whenever they were removed from one building.
Someone did a nice inflation calculator for us, and it seems it's between $318 and $350 is what the fine would be today for that $25 fine. I saw a couple of hands in the room. I'll take it first to Dr. Chislak.
Do you see in your sources any comments about the men that frequented those establishments?
Not nearly as many comments as there are about the women. Sometimes men who were frequenting these businesses were also picked up and taken to the police court, but their names are often left out of the historic record. It would say something like, here are the women who were picked up and brought before the police court and charged this much, and then the men who were their friends were with them were also charged something like $5 or $10 in the police court.
And on Zoom, Ben Bolden asks, are there any houses remaining today, any of the structures?
Not that I am aware of, not that I've been able to find. It seems like they were all torn down because Water Street is no longer a street. Yeah, I would love, that would be incredible if there were, but I don't believe there are.
Sorry, big room.
What streets are perpendicular to Battle Row?
So this to the right of Battle Row is Rock, and then to the left is Commerce. Yes, exactly. I'm sorry? Exactly, yes.
Will you repeat that, Carly, just so people on Zoom hear that comment?
He asked if it's where the amphitheater, the steamboat landing, about where the amphitheater is now.
All right, do we have any other questions in the room? Okay, 1 second.
I understand North Little Rock had many houses as well, serving the railroad workers. How did the two cities compare or compete?
I don't know much about North Little Rock's houses, at least prior to World War I. I know that once World War I, the U.S. enters World War I, and Little Rock City officials are especially concerned with the health of soldiers who were here at Camp Pike. There were some news reportings of some altercations between Little Rock City officials and North Little Rock City officials because Little Rock City officials wanted to keep their soldiers fit to fight, you know, that adage that was common at that time, because there were still houses ongoing in North Little Rock. But my main focus in my research was Little Rock.
And on Zoom, Angel asks, what was the payment system there? Did they just take cash, or was there like a token system?
I don't actually know. I think it was just a cash payment, but I don't think I ever came across any mention of the specific method of transaction in the court systems.
All right, sorry, I keep wandering around. I'm just trying to make sure I get to everybody. Does anyone else in the room have questions? Oh, we've got a couple more.
Not to challenge my table mate, I Googled and it says the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 1913, $25 would be $818.40, according to the CPI.
818.49. So there's I think inflation calculators kind of use a variety of variables. So we've got anywhere from $300 to $800, a pretty steep fine. Oh, okay, he gave it $10 to the calculator. That's where the disparity comes from. So the $800 is probably a little bit more accurate. So, all right. Any other questions? Okay, great. Let's give Carly oh, we've got one more. Sorry. There's a couple more in the back. Thank you. These polls make it hard to see everything sometimes.
Do you know why Penitentiary Mary was called Penitentiary Mary?
That is a great question that I have not been able to find the answer to. I did find a report, an article about her going to visit a friend at the penitentiary, and they then got into a fight at the penitentiary. I cannot say for certain if that's where the origin of her nickname comes from. Yes.
There was one more on Zoom that I think you may have addressed a little bit with the North Little Rock question, but there was a question about anything that changed this work with the military base. Did that affect operation with Camp Pike showing up in North Little Rock around World War I?
There were a lot of efforts to create alternative means of entertainment and amusement for soldiers at Camp Pike. There was a whole committee that was created. It was people's entire jobs to try and find things for soldiers to do so that they would not be tempted into the arms of evil and vice. And in fact, the city of Little Rock officials also got into a little tiff with Hot Springs officials because Hot Springs has operated as an open city. And so Camp Pike soldiers on their leisure time were going to Hot Springs and partaking in the available amusements there. And the city of Little Rock ordered the city of Hot Springs to close their brothels for the duration of the war to protect their soldiers. Otherwise, they threatened to prohibit soldiers from going and spending their money in Hot Springs.
All right, official last call for questions. All right, well, let's for real give Carly a round of applause. Thank you, Carly. welcome to just, yeah, you can leave that there. Thank you. All right, and we have one more raffle, and then I will announce next month's Legacies. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to support programs like this, I would encourage you to donate to the CALS Foundation. And you can join us back here at the Dara Center on Wednesday, April 1st from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock p.m. for Violence and the Law in Jim Crow, Arkansas, with historian John Kirk and attorney author Scott Stern. And our last little raffle here, boop, boop, boop. The last three numbers are 267. Is 267 still here? Okay, I'll draw one more. 273? No? Oh, we've got 273? Awesome, great. I will get this to you at the end. Thank you all. Have a good day.